welcome to Thrive in Sales, a sales training and thriving podcast.
This episode is brought to you by Monkey Pants Productions. Monkey Pants specialise in podcast production, media workshops, event hosting, and most importantly, a cup of tea. You can get a hold of them on pete@monkeypantsproductions.co.uk.
Hi, I'm Neeraj. I'm an interactive sales coach and a sales trainer. And I get results for small businesses and large corporates like Barkas, Sainsbury's, and Google. I'm the author of 2 best-selling books, Everybody Works in Sales and The Easy Guide to Sales for Business Owners.
And I'm Keith. I've sold technology services into large corporates throughout my career, and I sales-led one of the largest ever software deals ever written, at well over $1 billion. Right now, I'm a sales coach and a visiting lecturer at Aston Business School in professional selling.
And every week, we'll share proven strategies to help you generate more sales. Plus, we'll bring in special guests onto the show to give you the knowledge, strategies, and takeaways you need to thrive in sales. Now, this week's topic is going to be the telephone. And our special guest this week is Lucy Barkas. Lucy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, Lucy works with Generation X and Zennial leaders to help them step up, take control, and lead with purpose. She believes that everyone can achieve their full potential if allowed to, and this generation are primed and ready to do so. And over the next decade, they will take the C-suite roles and lead differently. Bold claim, I really like that. And Lucy is author of the book Lead X. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So look, telephone, nowadays, especially in lockdown, I personally am having more success with the telephone. I'm speaking to more prospects. And yet, despite this, I'm constantly surprised at the number of people who insist on emailing me constantly, especially people who I know for a fact have unsubscribed from their databases years ago, and they feel the need to just email me again, thinking GDPR doesn't apply anymore. What are your thoughts on having success on the telephone generally, or even just during a lockdown? Do you use a telephone much, or what are your thoughts on it, Lucy?
Well, to be honest with you, all of my sales are initiated, or the relationship is built first on the telephone. Now, that's not to say that they haven't seen my work that I've put out online, and they've seen my articles, my blogs, my videos, etc. But the first stage of the sales process is always having a conversation. It's the opportunity for them to see whether they like me, whether I actually like them, to really understand what their issues and problems are. And once that trust is built and you've got that relationship going, it's actually quite hard to say no to someone.
I like how you said understand their problems, because it's much harder understanding somebody's problems on email. And I feel that so many people hide behind email, literally because they're scared of picking up the phone, or in many cases, they haven't been trained properly to pick up the phone. What are your thoughts on this, Keith? How much do you use the telephone compared to, say, email and LinkedIn?
Yeah, I do use the telephone, probably not as much as I should. I find that it's a mix, actually, and they all have their place. We had on a previous episode 4, I think it was, that we talked about email and the psychology of emails. But that's feels very much mud against the wall, that kind of principle. And I really feel like sales, the psychology of selling, the sophistication of buyers these days, we're just a million miles beyond that. That was a very early sort of sales profession sort of technique. The phone is unique. The phone, if you know how to make it work for you, whilst respecting the other person's time, because let's face it, no one is sat there waiting for Neeraj or Lucy to phone them up to say, hey, let's talk about my business. No one's doing that. So if you know how to make the phone work for you, it absolutely, there's nothing to replace it other than being face-to-face. And the best way to get you that face-to-face.
Okay, so Lucy, you said all your calls are initiated by the telephone. So how do you build that trust? What do you say to people on the phone that kind of make them want to go to the next level with you?
Well, generally I don't do cold calling. So I just want to let you know that to start off with. So generally we've had some kind of interaction, and it may be that they've liked a comment, or, you know, they've reached out, or or it's generally a programmed call. So I've done the softening up. But the first thing I do is just say, hi, how are you? No different to the conversation that if you saw them down the pub, and then say, you know, so how are things going for you right now? What are the biggest challenges that you've got? And all the time, just listen, empathize, and say, yeah, I've experienced that, or one of my clients experienced that, and that's how I got them out of it, or this is what I did. So almost offer them a little bit of almost free consultation over the phone. Don't give too much away, but enough so they're like, this person can really help me. So it's almost, rather than thinking of it as a sales call, think of it as a service call. And the more you actually give, the more then they feel like this person gets me, they understand me, I trust them. And then you can start talking about, so what are the next steps? Can we get a meeting together? Can we formalize something? But that first bit really is just you asking questions to find out, actually, are they the right customer for you, if anything else?
That's really good. I agree with everything you've said there,
Good.
except how are you? If somebody says, how are you in the phone, the first thing I say to them is, what are you selling me? And quite often,
But remember, for me, I don't do the cold calling.
yeah.
So this is generally a relationship of somehow that I've already had. So it feels like talking to a friend. But I absolutely agree with you. If I had a cold call and they said, how are you? I'm like, what's your game? You don't know me. You don't care, actually.
Absolutely.
What else do you want to add to that, Keith?
Lucy's right on the money there. This goes back to how I originally came to know Lucy through call centres, because I used to run a few of them for a Big Six energy firm, and it just drove me mad. If anyone listening to this has ever had a call from an energy services company or any kind of call centre, they kind of want to be your best friends from the get-go, and I'm just like. And I'm not a naturally rude person. I like to be everyone's friends, but we haven't even got any trust. There's no reason for us to have a relationship yet. And so, if I may, I know what you mean by cold calling, and I do think that concept of really hard, raw, cold, that's probably had its moment and is in the past. So I have what I would call warm calling, which I've done some research on someone. That's why I'm phoning them up. That's part of the qualification process. Tools like LinkedIn and networking events, whether virtual or face to face. And there's so many research tools that you can have. Google's another one that you can actually. You've done some research, and it's a warm call. You kind of know that there are going to be issues. So the first thing I do, if I was phoning up Lucy right now, she would answer the phone. She's almost certainly in the middle of something.
Yeah.
I would say, Lucy, this is Keith from Sales Marvel. Listen, I've got to be honest, it's a bit of a cold call. Don't suppose you got 30 seconds, have you? Now, I will say that probably 9 times out of 10, people will go, yeah, if it's 30 seconds, shoot. And then you better have a really good pitch ready, drilled into you, because that's the trust thing. We've got a contract for 30 seconds that I'm going to take 30 seconds of that, and that's where the trust thing is built. And after that 30 seconds, they're either interested in what I've got to say, or they're not. Frankly, we're all over 18, and that's okay. So, but the next steps thing is if I said anything that you're kind of, are you struggling with any of those issues? Yes. Okay. So the next steps would be, can we get 15 minutes on a Zoom call or on the telephone? Just go drill down a little bit more in detail, and then we've got a relationship, just like Lucy was talking about just now. We can have. Then I can probably ask, "How are you?"
Spot on.
At the next one. So sorry, I went off a bit there, but anyway, it's important. It's so important. You're only going to get that first chance, that one chance to make a good first impression. Don't blow it.
Brilliant. I absolutely love that. And it's so important what you said about build. Again, I think all three of us have the same thing. It's building trust. And it's everybody I speak to, even though I do a lot of prospecting myself, I still spend time researching them on LinkedIn. I spend time looking at their website. I look at their blogs. I see what mutual connections we may have, what kind of charity work they do in case I connect with them. I actually look at who they follow on LinkedIn. And I won a client last month because I saw she followed Bill Gates. And I said to her, I commented, I know she followed Bill Gates. You've got to watch Inside Bill's Brain. It's a fantastic documentary. She goes, oh my God, I've seen that as well. And she's seen it like a week earlier. And we were just talking about it and talking about it. And I asked her, what she was doing. And I just said to her, what was the reason you're connecting with me for? And she goes, look, I want to learn more about sales. She didn't say she wanted sales coaching or training. She just wanted to learn more about it. So the first thing was I gave her a ton of value saying, here's my YouTube channel. There's 50 videos on it. Everybody works in sales. Enjoy it. But just give me a promise. Come back to me in a week's time. I don't need your email address, your mobile. Just enjoy it, but come back to me in a week. And that's really effective because you're giving somebody a ton of value up front. And when you do that, I'm still surprised how many don't come back to me. But the ones that do come back to me, there's a good chance they're going to become a client of mine because they've kind of taken the next step and approached me saying, thank you. Hey, no problem at all. What's the kind of biggest issue kind of you're facing right now in sales? And then we start having a conversation. I'm saying, like, you know what? Why don't we just have a quick 10 or 15 minute chat? It used to be over the phone. Now I guess it's Zoom. And we'll just talk a bit more about it. And again, I try and probe deeper, find more out, see how I can help them. Because sometimes, this is very important, sometimes you can't help somebody. Or sometimes, believe it or not, I recommend them to somebody else who's more relevant. If you need a business coach, you want to grow your business this way, hire staff, I can advise you, but I know a business coach you can go to. And again, that trust and authenticity is so, so important.
And what I also find is that if you actually do those referrals or you offer them that kind of advice, they respect you and trust you even more. So if in 6 months or 12 months or even 5 years, then they need your service, you're absolutely the person that they think of.
I think people need to realize that quite often in sales, it's a long-term game. There was a guy, all my one-to-one clients for some reason are women. I have one male one-to-one client. And literally, it was last April, I referred him to somebody else who could help him on an SEO marketing front. And he was very close to becoming a client of mine. I said, look, I'm not really a marketing expert. I have decent knowledge of marketing, but I'm not a marketing expert. I recommended to somebody else. They got business. He then came back to me 8 months later to become a client. So, a lot of people are always looking for the short-term deal and forgetting about the long-term deal in sales. And so much sales is long-term. Sorry, I went off on one there, but I thought that was important to mention. So, Lucy, what do you think are the biggest business leadership challenges right now? Apart from the economic challenges, of course, we're facing, what are the biggest business leadership challenges people are facing right now?
So what I'm seeing is, what we're all facing, and it's that uncertainty. And I think so many leaders have, been accustomed to thinking that they have to have all the answers, or they're at the top of the tree, so therefore they must know everything. And it's that, superhuman kind of image that they put out there. And it comes down to, again, that trust, because of course they don't have all the answers. We've never lived in a time like this before. So just as being in sales, leadership isn't that different. You're still needing to listen to your people, listen and get all your facts, do your research, and then give your most honest answer, even if that answer is, I don't know right now. Let me go away and find out. Or I'm feeling upset, disturbed, angry, confused too, but this is what I'm doing about it. So I think the biggest challenge right now is leaders who are trying to pretend that everything is normal or be very dictatorial about things.
Yeah, I'm seeing the latter, unfortunately, too much at the moment, because a lot of leaders, a lot of people in senior positions got there by default. It's actually quite shocking number of people I know in high up positions who got there because they know somebody, or because the company didn't want to spend £10,000 on a recruitment consultant, so they gave them a job. It happens in sales as well. So many really good salespeople become sales managers and then haven't a clue how to manage because they haven't been trained properly. And of course, being good at sales doesn't make you a good sales manager. And it's a very interesting point you brought there. So if a business leader comes to you, just say they're really super stressed, because a lot of this podcast is about well-being as well, and they're really stressed. How do you help them? How do you help them overcome that on a one-to-one basis, Lucy?
So if I was working on a one-to-one basis, the way that I try and I use the metaphor or the analogy. It's almost like you've got all of those boxes in your attic, and they're getting full, and they're like getting loads of dust, and then more crap comes, and you have to throw that up there as well. So what I do is I get them to be really clear on where do you want to be, what's the outcome that you really want, and then right, let's unpack all those boxes and figure out what tools have you got, what resources have you got, what do you need to throw away, and if you haven't got what you need, where can you go and find it? And then once it's all done, we pack it all away again, and then you've got a plan and a strategy. So it really is just unpacking those boxes, getting that clarity, and then, do you know what, even in half an hour I can spend with the leader just on one topic, unpack those boxes, and they've got that moment of clarity. It's almost like the lights have turned on, they're like, I know what to do. So that's how I tend to work on a one-to-one. Now, generally, it's over maybe 6 hours, over, you know, either 3 or 6 months, and because change takes time, and, you know, nothing's a quick fix. But that half-hour call can be really almost therapeutic.
Yeah, it's a great shout. I often say to people, if I wasn't in sales, I would be in counselling.
Yeah.
Because actually, if done well, they're strikingly similar in terms of people. The reason sales has a poor impression in the UK is that most people show up and throw up.
Yeah.
In terms of, they just won't stop talking. Sales is not like that. Not sales done well. Sales done well is listening probably 75% of the time, and then of the 25% of the time that you do talk, it's like Lucy just said, it's giving real value, insight, maybe some industry knowledge, but helping to get them to get to that point of clarity. And if it so happens that that clarity means, you know, developing a business relationship with you, then that's wonderful. But if it means they're able to solve the problems themselves, that's even better. And as Lucy said earlier on, under the badge of, if there's one thing worse than no business, it's bad business. If you've invested enough time with someone and you've pointed them in the right direction, which is not towards you, it's towards someone else who can help them better, then God, you're in such a wonderful place for them to remember that, first of all, because that builds integrity and trust. And then when they'll know more about you, and they'll come to you when they do have a challenge that matches your skill sets, and that relationship will prosper.
It all comes back to whether that client or potential client, whether they know you, whether they like you, and whether they trust you. And the knowing bit is, even if you've not met them face to face, it's having those conversations, it's being present online through all your different channels. And so they feel like they know you, whether they like you, because there's that chemistry there. So if they're already aware of you, so they've come across your work, they genuinely must like you. You don't tend to watch people or read their blogs if you can't stand them. So you're already onto a winner. And then if they've picked up the call and they're willing to have more than 30-second conversation, they genuinely do trust you. So you're already onto a winner.
That's really good. Thinking about more the well-being side of things for a moment, a lot of what you've talked about, the unpacking the boxes, a lot of it seems to be in the mind, so to speak. Yeah. So how do you help people more with improving their mindset? Is it all to do with the mind, or is there stuff outside the mind you work on as well?
Well, I tend to, so here's a quick tip that I've been using a lot recently, because there are so many demands that are going on, so much chaos, and we often try and over-plan our days and under-schedule the time that we think it's going to take. So we end up just getting even more stressed. Mm-hmm. So the 3 things that I tell people to do is to pick 3 priorities every day in 3 different categories. And one of them will be physical. And that might be going to do your hours exercise. It may just be stretching. It may be in between calls, just go and move around and go and sit outside or something like that. So move your body around. So 3 positive physical things you can do every day. Then there's 3 mental things. And so they might be reading something, it might be learning something, it might be doing that business report that needs to be done. But again, don't spend all day only using that one muscle, because it will exhaust you. And the final thing is find 3 emotional things that are going to support you. And again, while you're outside, it may be listening to the birds. It may be having a giggle with your child and actually being really present. It might be having a conversation with a friend. But if you can focus on those 3 things every day and prioritize those, if you get nothing else done, honestly, you're going to feel better. But what most people do is they just do the physical or just do the mental or just do the emotional. And actually, everybody needs balance. And so when I work with a client, we get really clear on what are those 3 things that you need to achieve this week, this month, that are really going to set you up.
I love that. It's so true. I do the mental every day and a bit of the emotional, but I've never thought about, the physical, mental, and the emotional. That's actually for me the biggest takeaway here, I think. 2 last questions I have. Tell us more about your book, Lead X.
So that was a bit of a funny one because I decided to pick the 26th of June 26th of March to release it, and that was the week of lockdown. So my big launch party and all these lovely events obviously had to be cancelled. But actually, it's the most timely book because in the first page of the first chapter, it says that the 2020s are going to be a period of magnificent change. I had no idea it was going to happen in the first couple of months. But the book really is a call to a generation to step up. So I think the boomers, who we know and love, they are going to be retiring in this decade. And they keep looking around saying, but there's no talent out there. So they keep referring to the millennials, and they forget that there's a whole generation in between who have been parented or mentored by the boomers, so they know how to work and to have focus and etc. But they've also themselves nurtured and been colleagues with the millennials and probably parents of Gen Z who are coming up now. So they're a really great, unique group of people. They've got 20 to 30 years work experience, but they're so used to working in influencing from the sidelines that sometimes they forget that actually we need them to step up. So that's what the book's about, really. It's about a call to arms for these guys to set up. And then it's got the 5-step methodology to say, if you are leading a business, this is how you form a team. This is how you form a business. This is how you write a goal. So it's given some real tools. It's out there into the world. So go and buy it on all online retailers. And of course, I've got my own podcast that goes with it, which is the Leader X podcast.
That's fantastic. I really like the fact you said call to arms, because so many people do books because they know it's very good for branding, but they often don't have a mission or a reason for the book. And the best books I've read, whether it's Business for Punks by the guys behind Brewdog, or Tools for Titans by Tim Ferriss, they all have really strong call to arms. It's a great phrase as well. I love that. Well, one of the things that's really important to me and Keith, especially when it comes to sales training and learning, it's not just sharing the ideas, it's having takeaways. So, every episode we say, okay, here are the takeaways people want to start implementing, because when you implement takeaways and take action, you just not only learn so much more, you do so much better. And some of the stuff we have here is gold dust. So all relationships are, based on the telephone. Understand the problem. The telephone is unique. Please think about that before you just send out loads and loads of emails. You're softening up the client beforehand. And of course, to me, the biggest takeaway here is in well-being is the 3 priorities: physical, mental, and emotional. What would you add to that, Keith? I'm sure I missed a few bits and pieces out here. I've been scribbling furiously.
Yeah, I really like that idea, first of all, of building relationships, doing your research with people, because that will naturally bring you to have a conversation at some point. And therefore, that whole cold calling, that fear of being on the telephone dissipates, because you're having a grown-up conversation about real valuable stuff. Also, a service call. It's the first time I've heard that expression in that context. I love that. Yet another thing I'm going to steal from a guest on our show.
Every episode you steal something from a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sincerest form of flattery, right? So I really like that, and empathise with your client. I really like the concept of empathizing. We don't do nearly enough of that. And also, actually, just step up. There's a lot of take responsibility. Just critically important messages just now. We'll go off actually on the UK in the 1980s had where there was strong manufacturing base. There was a fantastic program of middle and senior management training that used to go on. The big industrial firms, FTSE 100 manufacturing firms, were known for their training. You would join a company because of its quality of its training. Those are long gone these days, and we have to look for other channels to get our leadership training from, people like Lucy and others, and master's programs and all the rest of it. But there's a reason that the UK is second from bottom in the G7 just now, and I think well, there's 20 different reasons for that. But leadership, proper management training, proper sales with ethics, and the way that that's viewed. If we can just adjust those 2 line items in those 20 items, we will start to fire on all cylinders as the United Kingdom. I genuinely feel that's the case.
Well, that's a call to arms.
It certainly is. Is there anything else we missed out that you were saying? You said so much great stuff. Is there anything else you want to leave us with at all before you go, Lucy?
No, just buy my book. That'll do.
What's the best way to contact you as well? By the way, we should ask that. What's the best way for people to contact you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I tend to hang out, and I'm much more likely that if you send me in message there, I'm much more likely to respond to you. So, but of course, I'm on all the other channels. There's only one Lucy Barkas. I'm sure there's a song about that. So yeah, come and find me.
And she's only one Lucy here right now.
Yeah.
Well, look, if you have any questions, any point you want to raise, you'd like to discuss in future shows, or if you want to hire myself or Keith for sales training, bear in mind we work with Barclays, Vodafone, Sainsbury's, companies like that, then please email us at hello@thriveinsales.com. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now, because Keith and I are both massive fans of the TV show Frasier, until next week, thank you for joining us, and we're wishing you
good sales mental health.
That's the first time we've got that in sync. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody.